It was in April 1967 that Duke Ellington arrived in Montreal as part of the Jazz at the Philharmonic, which also included Oscar Peterson. This revival of the Jazz at the Phil, which had ceased to function 5 years previously, was to help celebrate the huge cultural festival which was part of Montreal's magnificent World Expo, dubbed Man and His World. It was to date the best of all world festivals, and Canada built 2 islands in the St. Lawrence Seaway to house the 100-odd nations that participated. I managed to fix an interview with Duke Ellington in his dressing room during the Jazz at the Phil concert at the Place des Arts. In fact, you will hear Oscar Peterson and other musicians playing in the background, which Duke alludes to from time to time. Ellington was his usual urbane, articulate self, and skewers me nicely when I use the term jazz business. He ends as usual with his catchphrase, "Remember, we love you madly," but because of location, he says it in French. I started by asking if he thought resurrecting jazz at the Phil was a good idea.
Oh, I think it's a wonderful thing. Actually, it's really what I would say is the first of the jazz festivals, you know. Later on, they put them in parks, you know, and put 15,000 people. But Norman Granz, of course, who does jazz at the Philharmonic, he, of course, operates a lot of European. Well, he's the biggest impresario over there with these concerts. And of course, he is a great believer in doing concerts in concert halls and putting concerts in ballparks, arenas, and all that sort of thing. He seems it sort of lowers the standard of the artistic plateau or something like that.
Something like that. Why did Jazz at the Phil come to an end 5 years ago? Do you know?
Well, actually, Norman Granz, I think he sort of retired more or less. Well, what actually happened? He owned Verve Records, you know, and he had built this big sort of empire, and he sold the record company to MGM, and it sort of I don't know. He I suppose his image sort of went away from the scene, and he went along with the image more or less, and you know, it was the expedient thing. I mean, to go to Saint-Tropez and lay out there, you know, and be in with the in people and all that sort of thing. And he got bored with it, you know, and he said he wanted to came back. And so, but he's been very active with his concert touring, but only in Europe. Mm-hmm. And of course, in Europe, he doesn't use the Jazz at the Philharmonic label. He just operates as Norman Granz. And so this year, he got a nostalgic sort of thing for the Jazz at the Phil, and decided, well, I'm going to have one big blow, you know, and come on back and do this thing, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so here we are.
Good to see you all back again. You've been in the jazz business a long time now. Somebody once said it's...
hey, you know, I never thought of that way. That is it. I've been trying to explain, because I've had a sort of a hassle. You know, I chronically go around saying, well, you know, the word jazz is getting too small for the music and the people who are in it, you know. But you have just solved it. I've been in the jazz business, and jazz as a word to cover the music is too small. It has nothing to do with the business. You're right, absolutely.
Is there nothing we can you stop it a minute?
I don't see anything wrong with having great Oscar Peterson as a backdrop.
Oh, I think it's great. We don't need the applause, though. I was going to ask you, somebody said, yeah, well, jazz has got respectable, and so it's lost a lot of its glamour and a lot of its feeling. How do you feel about this?
Well, when did you hear that? Who had the nerve to bring that back? That was said about Paul Whiteman in 1921.
Really?
He made a lady out of jazz when he added strings to it. And somebody really leaned a little bit, didn't they?
Yeah, well, you know, jazz...
Well, jazz has always been respectable. It's been music, you know. And music can be neither respectable or otherwise. Actually, it's just music. How can music be respectable?
Well, I think it's the connotation of improvisation, something, a completely new departure from, say, the classics or the kind of the sweet music.
Yeah, but the classics, they improvise.
The classics.
The greatest masters in the world improvised. The greatest masters in the world wrote music to be improvised on.
Yeah, but it was always done in such a seamless kind of chamber music presentation. And then there was this sweet dance music. And then along came jazz, which had this. Well, I suppose it did have this air of sin about it, didn't it, when it first
About
started?
sin? Oh, there are a lot of colorful stories about all kinds of music. About being born in the houses of ill repute and all that sort of thing. But these are colorful stories. And, it's impossible. You can't learn to play a horn in a house. You got to go outdoors, right? Unless it's a home.
Have you seen any...
With a pool.
Okay, what changes have you seen since you started and now in jazz? What changes have you seen?
Nothing changes other than the people. The personalities that come into it and go out of it. Some people like to remain aloof, above it or something like that, but jazz grows high and big, majestically, and nobody rises above it, actually. It's all the same music. I mean, you take 4 different cats who come out of the conservatory. One goes to the symphony to play and write. One goes to the movies and the TV to play and write. One is more dedicated. He goes back to the conservatory to teach or to direct the choir in the cathedral. And the other one goes to jazz. They all do the same music. They all have the same training, the same background. I mean, you have musical maturity coming into the scene today. It isn't like some cat who walked in through the field and picked up an instrument he didn't even know the name of it and started blowing it, and out came jazz. That's the colorful story. I mean, that a lot of people would like to have had believed.
In as much, let's get this out.
That's Oscar Peterson's applause.
Has the standard of musicianship, instrumental musicianship, risen in the last 20 years? We were always told what fabulous musicians they were back in the 30s. How do you feel about this?
Musicians get better and better and better. But of course, there's no such thing as taste getting better. Taste, either you have taste or you don't have taste. I mean, maturity of taste is a questionable thing. The child has good taste, he's born with good taste. You can't teach good taste. So, I mean, you have musicians come out well equipped. What happens in their mind, their imagination, and all that sort of thing is something that's God-given.
But technical fluency has gone right up now.
Oh, yeah.
One of the records of yours that I've enjoyed and got a great deal of enjoyment out is A Drum is a Woman.
Yeah.
When was that written in the first place?
I think it was 1957. Yeah, that's the history of jazz, parallel to the history of jazz.
Was it written for any specific purpose, or did it just come to you?
Originally, it was written a couple of years before that. It was written as a show. And Bob Sylvester and I were sitting one night in the Hickory House talking. He said, well, why don't you record it? Because... So I said, that's a good idea. I think I will. So I recorded it, And now we're invited to do it as a show next year at Stratford Shakespearean Festival.
You are?
In Ontario, yeah.
Good. That's terrific.
I love it. It's a lot of stuff. Of course, all of it, the entire show is not on the record. And there's so many wonderful opportunities in it.
Well, what is on the record is some very fine music and some great humor on it. And I was wondering whether it ever had been done on the show. Now you've given me the answer that it will be done next year at Stratford.
Yeah, that's the plan, anyway.
You also did, I think it was last year, a jazz mass somewhere, right? You were responsible for that?
Yeah, we did, not a jazz mass, we did a sacred concert. And this has nothing to do with jazz, it has nothing to do with my career at all, because I don't do it for profit. I refuse to do it on a business basis. Of course, we play for a lot of different kinds of churches. We've done about 40. Some of them are rich, some of them are poor. And we play according to whatever we can manage. If it's convenient, we can do it for practically nothing. And in many instances, of course, where churches are not promoters. They don't know how to promote things and that sort of thing. Sometimes they lose money. Whatever money they lose, we give them the money back. You see?
And you're going with the complete
make
band?
a donation, huh?
You're going with the whole band?
Oh, with the whole band. It's an enormous thing. You see, we use 3 choirs, about 6 feature singers, and a dancer. And we just did it the other night at Harvard University, at the cathedral there. And we've done it in England at Coventry Cathedral. We did it at Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, Fifth Avenue Presbyterian Church in New York. And there's an album out on it, on RCA Victor. And the royalties from this album are split up 6 ways between 5 churches and me. So you see, it has it's a very personal statement. It has nothing to do with career. Absolutely, I was invited to do it, and it was a great opportunity for me to say something I believe. And so I wrote the whole thing, every words, music, orchestration.
What more can we look forward to from your pen, Mr. Ellington?
From my pen? Oh, I don't know. I haven't seen my pen this morning.
Well, how about the piano then?
Well, listen, I want you to know, baby. I mean, this is the toughest thing in the world. Going out and sitting. I use the piano as a piece of furniture to sit at in this show because my music teacher told me never sit down to the piano behind Oscar Peterson. I should work 40 years and build up an image, and suddenly Oscar Peterson comes along. Vroom. So I'm a band leader. I'm no longer a piano player.
I mean, what are your next compositions or your next records coming out?
Well, actually, right now I'm working on some music for, it's sort of leitmotif for Coventry Cathedral, a play they're doing in England. And my deadline is the end of this month. And so I'm working on that. Well, I'm always working on 2 or 3 different things at one time.
And any more things like Drum is a Woman?
Like Drum is a Woman? Oh, yes, I have to. I just missed getting my ice opera in the expo. Nobody knew anything about it, and it was the perfect vehicle for this, with all these ice skaters they got up here. Mm-hmm. And it's a beautiful thing. But by the time the people, my representatives, got around to it, why, there was no place to do it. And it's an enormous thing, calls about 200 people, skaters,
One last question, Mr. Ellington. If you hadn't become a band leader, what would you like to become?
Well, I think I would have followed my natural talent. And my first recognized talent was painting, drawing, I won a scholarship to Pratt Institute. And if I hadn't been in music, I would have taken advantage of it when I came out of high school.
Do you still paint?
No, I buy paint and I buy cardboard and canvas that sits in the corner and collects dust.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ellington. I know you're going on in 5 minutes, and I hope you have a very good tour with this Jazz at the Phil.
Thank you very much, and please tell all of your lovely listeners that je vous aime à la folie.
Merci beaucoup.